Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Van Diesel back with Cartified Vanguard deck profile. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't like, comment, subscribe, and let's one shot, shall we? This time we are covering set 11 Dark States Ultra Slaughter. Before we get this started though, let's all remember these decks are built for fun, though, to be optimal. This one obviously isn't meant to be anything but fun, considering it's not even a main grade 3. Though thankfully he does have a Vanguard skill, so we can work that. But let's go and get this started, shall we? And we can get this over, because honestly this deck is actually really fun, and it wasn't supposed to work. I'm starting to see the trend where if I build something with the intention of it failing, like actively trying to make it fail, it'll work. Because this deck wasn't supposed to work, and it does. Musashi wasn't supposed to work, and it does to some extent. The next deck I'm covering definitely wasn't supposed to work. It was literally meant to lose, and while yes it did, it worked a lot better than it had any right to. So let's go and get this started, shall we? And we can kind of see where this trend is going and try to predict the next stupid thing I do. First up today, we have our starter in one with Profound Mercy. Chaos, grade 0 boost, 5k Shosuke base. All if you win second draw cards, stand starts, it's just a free draw if you win second. The starter doesn't really matter in this deck because like the ride line is kind of spread everywhere, so you could really run any starter you want and it will work out the same way. And I just chose Chaos because honest to god he is actually my favorite starter. Like he just has that whole superiority complex, like I am better than all of you, bow down before your god type of thing. So one of Chaos in the ride deck. Then we have our triggers. First, we have one over trigger in Hades Dragon, Deity of Resentment, Gale Magechild, Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Over trigger, mail one over trigger in your deck. Reveals as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one of each, implement on this turn. And if you revealed it during draft check, activate its additional effect, which you get during your turn. All your Vanguards get plus 10k power and plus 1 critical, 10 to fight. All around, pretty solid skill because that means your Vanguard, who already is at least somewhere in the 40s at all times, more or less, gets an extra 10k and a critical on top of that, so it's a 50-something, probably 51, double critical swing to phase, which is nice to have, especially when your rear guards are also swinging for high 40s/50s without triggers. So one of Gale Magechild, nice pressure, and there's nothing more I can say about it. And then we have our normal triggers. First one, 3 copies of Huckle Hustle, grade 0, Huckle Hustle, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power. Okay, we all know why I'm not running the effect fronts at this point. Like, it's kind of like a thing that's been happening for sets now. If you don't know why I don't run the effect triggers, go, like, watch any video from, like, the earlier sets, like, probably somewhere around set 6, I think is where I was still doing that stuff, that have archetypal triggers, and then go watch the reasoning why I don't run those in other decks. But, yeah, I'm not going to explain this again. I've explained it enough. So, 3 of Huckle Hustle, just a nice solid front. Also, she is really good for me. Like, if I need a front to show up, she will just show up on her own accord. So, nice that I can rely on the fronts to be sackful when I need them to be sacked. Then we have 8 crits, 4 copies of Flinty Slasher, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power, which I have a story on, which we'll get to in a second. And then 4 copies of Stem Deviate Dragon, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power, critical trigger all at the end about a boost to put this unit to soul. Choose a range, gets 2k for the turn. Okay, for those of you that don't know, Ultra Slaughter, aka Transroad, whichever one you remember the name of, technically Ultra Slaughter is its actual official name. It needs a lot of grade 0s in Soul. So being able to send itself to Soul, which I used once to set up for a turn and I regret nothing of that decision, is actually useful. So for once those crits going to Soul is a nice ability. But then also in the sense of, it's more crits, so why not? And the story about Flinty Slasher. When I played this deck, this version of it, for the first time, I did not win. Everything went horribly wrong. The second game, not only did everything go right, incredibly so well to the point where I was starting to question, was the first game a fluke or was that a fluke? And then the following game proved me that the first game was the fluke because it, again, pulled off the BS consistency. But I consecutively soul charged all 4 copies of Flinty Slasher. And you see, if I had a penny for every time I did that, I would only have 2 pennies. The weird thing is, it's not a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. The weirder thing is that it happened twice consecutively, because that happened the first time in Game 2, and then Game 3, it happened again, where I soul charged all 4 copies of Flinty Slasher. I don't believe it, but that's how it works. So, yeah, cool. We run 8 crits for pressure, and it's nice to soul charge them, especially when this one just gets all soul charged at once. Then we have 4 heals in Steam Scar on Melancholy, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Standard heal, that's about it. I don't really like the effect heals too much. The 2 situation, in my opinion, I prefer the standard 15k heals over a 10k shield most of the time. That will sometimes go to 25k shield in very specific situations. If you want to run the effect heals, go ahead, but I like the consistent 15k over the fluctuating 10 to 25. Then we have our grade 1s. First, we run 4 PGs and Repelled Malice Dragon, grade 1 boost, 0 6k base, contains Sentinel. You may have up to 4 summons in deck. On put on guard circle, choose one mute, it cannot be hit on battle. And if your hand is 2 or more cards, 2 cards scoured or standard PG. Not about battle, basically that means that this only card can place on guard circle. You don't have to scale one, which is great, because that means you guys can customize you want in the early game, which is something you do want to do because you want to make sure you put your opponent to at least no less than 3 damage, preferably 4 before you get to grade 3, so that when you hit them with everything you've got, they pretty much have to drop at least 2 PGs on first grade 3 turn, otherwise you win. So 4 Repel Mouse Dragon. It's nice to have because when your opponent kind of rams you back from that turn and you have nothing to defend yourself with, yeah, the PGs come in real handy there. Of course you can run, what's the other one called? Something Dragon. Riskill Hay Dragon, there we go. You could run Riskill Hay Dragon because they have the exact same skill, but Repel Mouse Dragon is closer to the release of Transrotor, or Ultra Solid. I'm still not going to say it by that name because I keep forgetting it, but I prefer Repel Mouse because, again, it is closer to the release of him. Then move on to 4 copies of Tiny Devil of the Swift Hulk Demonic Realm. I remember it was just called something Devil Boys and not Swift Hulk Demonic Realm. I feel like they didn't have to put that, but I guess that's its official name now. Great on boost, 5k short, 8k base. Okay, so these things are a little cute. Like, look at them. They have, like, their small little talons, and then, like, those aren't eyebrows, but, you know, like, the small armor, and then the wings and the tail. Oh, it's so cute. I just want to hold one of them and scrunch them up. Anyways, auto is placed on Rearguard Circle by Soul Blasting Willing the top 5 cards of your deck to 1 unit card with Swift Hulk Demonic Realm and its card name from on them. Reveal, put it to hand, shuffle your deck. All around, pretty solid. It's a instant Soul Blast one, which is nice, because at worst, you have 3 free soul before you use Transrotor skill once. So you do kind of have to be careful about that, but I mean, at the same time, you don't really have to be careful about that, so take that as you will. But being able to top 5 search for either a copy of itself and get more searches, or get a copy of one of your other 2 main win cons, pretty nice. So 4 of Tiny Devil. It's just a really solid searcher, and I like his skill. Then we have 4 copies of Brainwash Swirler. Great on boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Auto when it's placed on Rearguard Circle, free soul charge. Granted, it's a mandatory soul charge, which can deck you out on the later games, but if you play this early, your opponent will probably snipe the hell out of this for numerous amounts of reasons, and we're going to get to that reason right now. Auto Rearguard, when your card is put into your soul by your soul charge, if your Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, this unit gets 5k power for the turn, so 10k if you soul charge too. So it says soul charge and not send cards to soul, otherwise this thing would be absolutely broken, because it's possible to give this thing 60k in a turn. If it was like that, it would be possible to give it 60k in a turn, but it's not, sadly. So instead, we must go with the solid skills of, you know, just on-play soul charge 1 and then the Vanguard's actual soul charges. But here's the thing about that, because the Vanguard soul charge is 6 at once, this is a free 30, and then, you know, plus the Vanguard skill giving an additional 10. This thing outright from the Vanguard skill alone gets a total of plus 40. If you play this, 9 times out of 10, if your opponent has the ability to nuke something, unless the other thing on your board is terrifying, they're going to nuke this because they know this thing is going to lead to numbers that kills you. The only reason they would kill the other thing is because the other thing has extra criticals. So, 4 Brainwash Swirler. All around, very solid grade 1, does what it does for free, and gets numbers out the wazoo to the point where the second it gets on the board, your opponent has already have a gun towards its head. Cool grade 1. Then we have 4 copies of probably the best support card I've ever seen printed in general, and probably the best support card they've ever given to just a random grade 3 deck. 4 copies of Inhale Pit. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Okay, let's go and get this out of the way. Boo, moon. I mean, not boo, moon, sorry. Yay, moon. Bias in the background. And then also, is that London? Question mark? I see towers. That doesn't mean it's London, but for some reason in my mind, I associate towers with London. Anyways, act Rearguard Circle once per turn. Soul Blast 1 grade 1 or greater card. Choose 2 grade 0s from your drops and put them to soul. Cool. All around, very solid. Gets 2 triggers to drop, or not technically triggers, but obviously it's going to be triggers back from drop into soul, which is nice. Or like you can recycle your soul blast, like for example, soul blast out of grade 0 for this one, and then use this to get that grade 0 back in there. Of course, I don't think you should do that, but especially if you have more grade 0s and drop. But hey, all around Inhale Pit is a very solid grade 1. It's technically a soul charge too, but it's not really. It just helps set up for the deck and what's not to like about it. Next up, we have our last grade 1, so the grade 1 of the ride deck. None in the main deck. 1 copy of Deep Sonicer. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Auto was placed on when it's placed on Vanguard Circle, soul charge 1. So cool, it's just a free soul charge being placed, which is nice. And then continues Rearguard during turn. If you still have some more cards, it gets plus 10k power. Okay, that ability will never go off, because you can't call it from soul, you can't call it from drop, so too bad, so sad, you're never going to get that 10k, but on the bright side, you don't need it because you have Brainwash and everything else in this deck that gets numbers, but also, it's a free soul charge in place. So, all around, Soil grade 1, like its skill, 1 of in the ride deck, none in the main deck. Next up, we have 4 copies of Steady Spike. Grade 2 units at 5k shield, 10k base. Auto, when she's placed on Rearguard Circle from your hand. Counterboss 1, put a grade 0 from your hand into your soul. Choose a grade 1 card from your soul, put it to hand. All around, solid. This deck doesn't use up too much CB. If I remember correctly, there are only 2 cards in the deck that use up CB, this being one of them. And basically being able to swap out a trigger with any card in your soul. For example, maybe Inhale Pit that you soul charged off Deep Sonicer, a PG that you soul charged off of Deep Sonicer, or a Brainwash that you soul charged off of Deep Sonicer, or any card you soul charge after using the Vanguard skill. is pretty nice. Granted, it has to be specifically a grade 1, but all around, very solid skill. Helps fetch all of your pieces, which is why the grade 1s are the most important cards in this deck, and also get you a grade 0 so to help set up for Transrooter. Easy 4 copies of Steady Spiky. Just a very solid and powerful grade 2. What's not to like about him? Her, it, they. Then we have 4 copies of I don't even know why I struggle to say that. Devil Knight of Swift Hulk Demonic Realm. So, this thing just looks amazing. I swear, every time I look at this, it looks like a double rare, because this honestly looks like a foil to me, but it's not. Anyways, great turns at 5k shield, 10k base. Auto front or rear guard circle. When this unit is rest for the cost ability of your Battle Rogue of the Swift Demonic Realm, counterblast 1, and stand this unit. And then auto rear guard when this unit stands by any card's ability gets 5k power for the turn. All around pretty solid, so even if you didn't want to use it in this deck, you could use it in Bruce, because Bruce is going to stand a lot of units a lot of times, and it can also stand itself by being rest for a skill that isn't once per turn. So all around, like, Devil Knight and Bruce would honestly be very powerful, because you're restanding it, I think, 3 times that entire turn, and while it's only going to be able to attack twice, it's going to get 5k each time it restands. So all around, very solid grade 2. I like its skill, but even in this deck, it still does a lot, because even though it's only going to get the 5k once, it can still stand for a simple cost of a counterblast, and it does benefit from, you know, your other rear guard getting a crit, and this is typically what Brainwash is behind, which is why this deck is sometimes very powerful, because if your opponent doesn't nuke rear guards a lot, you have a column that has a big beat stick in it that will have an even bigger or a slightly less beat stick swing at your opponent, and then you have another column which has a big beat stick with extra critical. Which one do you pick? Granted, the other beat stick is bigger, but like still, you're kind of stuck between, do I get rid of the crit or do I get rid of the bigger beat stick? All around, Devil Knight kind of makes it a lot easier for the pick. So very solid grade 2, gets the restand, gets the numbers. What's not to like about it? 4 of. And then we have our last grade 2, which is the grade 2 of the ride deck. 1 in the ride deck, none in the main deck for obvious reasons. Diablos, Anger Richard. Grade 2 is a 5k shield, 10k base. Auto, when you're placed on Vanguard Circle, put a rear guard to soul, draw a card, and then continues rear guard if you're in final rush, it gets 5k power. Okay, you're never going to pull up that second ability, because again, you can't call from soul, you can't call from drop. Also, even if you could, there's nothing in this deck that has final rush, so you would never be able to pull that off. But then this other ability, the one you're here for, is the send a rear guard to soul, draw a card. Very solid. If you're wondering why I'm not running Steve with this, is because, well, Steve doesn't really get you an extra, like, trigger. Because the way it is, Steve calls the starter from Soul, and then Soul charges 1, so if it's a trigger, great. But then when you use Richard, you're only getting that grade 0 back, so at most you only have 2 grade 0s. How this one works is you have Chaos in Soul when you ride Deep Sonicer. Deep Sonicer, let's say Deep Sonicer does Soul charge your trigger, you have 2 grade 0s in Soul, and now, while yes, you're forced to commit a card from hand to rear guard, if you commit a trigger such as one of these 2, you can just send it to Soul with Richard's skill when you ride Richard the next turn, and then get a draw. Therefore, you have 1 more grade 0. That's why I like having this ride line over having, like, Steve and Richard in the ride line, because this way you can get 1 more grade 0 into Soul, and sometimes that 1 grade 0 makes all the difference, because you do have to kill as fast as possible, and 1 card could really make the difference. So 1 of Richard in the ride deck, none in the main deck, very solid skill, helps replace cards, and just gets more Soul cards. And then we have our grade 3s. 3 copies of Battle Rogue of the Swift Hulk Demonic Realm, grade 3, 10%, 30k base. You want to know a fun fact? I somehow, even though this is at 3 copies, and this is at 4, I see this less, somehow, than I see this. In general, and typically in my opening hand to be more specific, but just in general. And then I also see this, the same amount that I see this. I don't know why, the Searcher, the one I should be seeing the most, I see less compared to these 2, but whatever. Anyways, his skill, Auto Rear Guard, with not once per turn, by the way. When this unit is boosted by a Tiny Devil of the Swift Hulk Demonic Realm, rest a Devil Knight on the Swift Hulk Demonic Realm on your rear guard circle, Soul Charge 1, and this gives 10k power and a critical for the battle. All around, solid. While yes, it has to be specifically boosted by this 1 unit, and you have to specifically have this on board, this can be anywhere. Granted, yes, to restand it has to be in the front row, but it could be a back row set, and it will still proc off the effect, which is nice. And it'll get the Soul Charge, so, you know, it can proc off Brainwash more, possibly get more triggers and Soul for this one. And then it gets plus 10k and a crit. 23, double critical swing, and again, it's not on once per turn, so if you're playing this in Bruce, you could do that twice a turn, which all around is very solid. I would say you could run it did kind of just cross through my mind that you could run that 1 grade 2 that everyone runs a graduate that's got like restand a rear guard. I would choose not to personally, because I don't, well, first up, I didn't remember it. Second up, it's a promo that I don't think has come to English yet. And then third up, I think it has to attack, or like at the end of the battle it attacked, which I don't want to do that, because then I have to put this in the back row, and then I have to have 2 of them on board. But even though this deck kind of requires 3 different pieces to be on board, first up, these 3 are not the main focus. Yes, that's the reason why this deck has a set 11 version, but they're not the main focus. It's just nice to have all 3 on board. But this deck will consistently pull off all 3 on board. Even if you board nuke them, they can at least bring it back once. The reason why I say once is because typically 2 of these get soul charged right out the gate, so I only have like 1 extra shot at it, but all around, very solid. Has numbers, has crit pressure, is in a different column than Brainwash Guaranteed, meaning you have 2 different columns of pressure, so easy card to use. It's nice to have 3 of. You don't need more than 3 of it, because like I said, I see this more often than I see this one, and I barely see this left often than I see this one, so take that as you will. Then we have our last card in the deck, 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the ride deck of our main grade 3, the man, the boy, the myth, the legend, Sky Severing Mnemonic Blade, Ultra Slaughter. Don't know why they couldn't just stick with the name Transrotor, but whatever. Grade 3, 200% at 13k base, act Vanguard Circle once per turn by Soul Blasting any 6 grade 0 cards, doesn't matter if they're triggers or normal units, Soul Charge 6, and then choose 6 of your units, and this thing gets plus 10k power for the turn. You know what's funny? I'm now realizing that that's a total of 6 3 times, because we have 6 right here, 6 right here, and then 6 right here. What happens when you put them all together, folks? 6, 6, 6. We're summoning the devil, and I'm getting flashbacks of pentagrams that me and my friends did in school. I swear we didn't worship the devil, we were just doing a bit, but it was really funny that we made a pentagram. But anyways, all around, very solid skill, because yes, soul charging 6 all at once definitely decks you out really fast. You technically at max have 3 uses of this. I've used this 3 times, and in 1 game, and almost decked myself out, and I won the game off it, but you gotta be careful. You have at least 2, max of 3. So, pretty solid skill though, gets basically 10k to the entire board, plus a Persona Rider, that's an additional 10k to front row, plus Brainwash back here, who just gets a free 40 if you actually do that. So, all around, Transrooter is a very solid grade 3, and again, if you have this on the board, plus the Persona Ride, plus 10k in a crit, plus the 10k from this, all around, it's already a 43k beat stick on its own, but then because it has to be boosted for that ability to go off in the first place, that's an additional plus 18, that's a 61 double crit face. All around, this thing is very solid. Ultra Slaughter is just a very powerful grade 3. Granted, he has 1 skill, but he makes 1 really good use of that skill, and his rear guards also get a lot of benefits from it. All around, very powerful card, and it makes even the weakest of units good. So if you have a whole hand of grade 0s, if you can use a skill, use a skill. 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the right deck, which is a very powerful grade 3. That's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, this deck is fun to play. Like I said, even though this deck requires 3 specific pieces, which I guess is problems for people, which I can understand why it's a problem for people. I never really considered a problem when you need pieces for something, which might be the reason why I never have a problem playing Overdress. But, you know, it pulls it off relatively consistently. There's not been a single game where I've missed summoning them. The only game again, the first game where everything went wrong, I still played these guys. I just misplayed because I swung with this first instead of swinging with the Vanguard, but then also I just didn't get the 6 triggers and so on. But I promise you, most of the time, which is again most of the time when it actually works, it's pretty much guaranteed to win because it gets enough numbers, enough pressure to hurt things. So yeah, all around fun to play. Gets numbers, gets crit, has rear guards that have you're gonna want to focus on, and it has 2 different columns which are incredibly high with pressure to where if your opponent can't nuke consistently, they're basically gonna have to pick one. Which one's more deadly, Brainwash or this thing? So I'm gonna end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, don't forget to follow Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Stand up, your Vanguards.